So I've been in the business for 11 years. The first 2 years, I did. When you first get in the business, you don't know what you don't know. So I chose a very well respected company in town.
I am very excited today because I get to bring on not only a good friend, I get to bring on someone who was in corporate America, did very, very well, was an executive in corporate America, and then moved in the direction of entrepreneurship. And I'm as excited as you are to hear his story of the transition and what his life is now. He's a family man, obviously a husband, and he is someone that I highly respect in multiple categories. And so I'm not going to take any more time. Please help me welcome great friend and entrepreneur, Andrew Robinson.
Well,
Hey,
that's going
Andrew.
to be a hard. That's going to be a hard introduction to live up to, Greg. But thank you so
No,
much.
not at all. Not at all. But, I want to jump right in. And the truth is, there's a lot of people who don't know your story and they could go to
Right.
LinkedIn and read it, but it's so different to be able to hear it from the person that lived it. So could you just kind of give some bullet points on where you started and where you are today?
Sure. Well, back in college, I started college on an acting scholarship, so that's kind of a little bit different. And I did that for about 2 years, and I really enjoyed that part of my life. But the people that I found myself surrounded with kind of had this transient lifestyle. They would be looking for jobs in New York, they'd be in California, they would travel around the country, and I really didn't think that that was the type of lifestyle that appealed to me. So I had transitioned into pursuing more of a marketing degree, economics degree when I was in college. And my first job out of college was in the furniture industry. And what's interesting about that is it wasn't, it, I didn't go into that thinking that it was going to be a career. I just went into it saying, hey, I'm out of college. I need to do something. And I didn't have a strong direction. So I got involved with a privately owned company here in Columbus, Ohio, started working for them. I ended up working for them for about 7 years. So that temporary career led to something much longer.
Okay, that's fair. So that temporary career, I know the story, but that
Right.
temporary career that you had progressed you into a very significant role here in Columbus, but then that moved you on. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I was working for a privately held company. I was a store manager, district manager, regional manager, and then I became in charge of product development, real estate, research across the country. And we had stores in the United States and Canada. So that put me into conversations with another company here in town who was a very large Fortune 500 company. They had stores all over the United States, in the billions of dollars in revenue. And at the time, they had a hanging apparel apartment, and it really wasn't very productive for them. So myself and another individual approached them about converting some of their underutilized real estate and their hanging apparel departments into furniture, like in-house furniture departments. And everybody thought it was kind of a crazy idea, but we did that. And over the course of about 8 years, we grew that to about $500 million. And I took on some other responsibilities within the organization. So I ended up becoming the divisional vice president of two different divisions, the sheets, towels, domestics, carpeting, things like that, and the furniture. So probably for the better part of that first 16 years of my life, I either worked in an entrepreneurial run furniture company or this conglomerate furniture company, which had stores all over the United States.
Okay. So I know you're an entrepreneur today. I know you're a
Right.
business owner today. Was it then that the entrepreneurial bug took hold of you, or was it some other time?
I think that during my tenure at the other company, I just don't really want to mention names because I just don't think it's that terribly important.
That's okay.
Um, but the what I found is I ended up traveling almost 100 days a year. And I traveled all over the United States visiting our stores and our supply chain, visiting manufacturers. And then I spent a tremendous amount of time overseas. So I went to Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, China, Singapore. I went to South America. So all this time that I spent was when my wife and myself were raising a family of 4 children. And I think that this happens in corporate America a lot. You end up looking at an opportunity, you know that there's going to be sacrifices, but because it seems like a once in a lifetime opportunity, you pursue the opportunity. And sometimes it's to the detriment of your family relations. Now I had good, strong family relations, but I missed a lot of soccer games, basketball games. And I really, after 16 years of doing that, I wanted to do something that allowed me to stay at home a little bit more. So back in the early 2000 timeframe, I had actually created 2 different businesses. One was an online business where we were selling products online, which were very popular at the time. We were selling during the poker table craze that was or the poker gambling craze that was so prevalent in the early 2000 timeframe. We were importing poker tables from China, and then our poker table manufacturer also manufactured pool tables. So we were bringing in these really expensive items. We added on home theater seating. So as you can see, we stayed within the home entertainment category for that. But because of my furniture background, I wanted to open furniture stores in secondary and tertiary markets. So I live in Columbus, which is certainly not a secondary or tertiary market, really a primary market. From here, we went to Zanesville, Chillicothe, New Philadelphia, some of the secondary and tertiary markets here. And then we expanded into Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia. So that was an entrepreneurial business. I had a business partner. We actually had a board of directors. We had some outside investors, and we grew that to probably about $20 million a year over the next 8 years. But once again, I ended up spending a lot of time traveling. So that even though you step away from one thing, but work always ends up filling that void.
Absolutely. So obviously, because I've listened to this in another interview that you did, there was a transition period from corporate America or working in the marketplace for someone else to what you just described to me, and that is your entrepreneurial journey with those 2 different businesses. Okay, tell me a little bit about that transition in the sense of what was going through your mind and why you made that transition.
I think I'm going to step to the next pivot, which came probably in around 2014. My company, this is kind of a story of the banking industry, and I'll just share it with you. Everyone knows that in order to grow a business, you usually have to go to a lender and get a loan for inventory, a revolving line of credit. And I feel like our business was financially very stable, but we were in an unstable banking environment, and we had about a $2 million line of credit to run our company, and the bank was positioning itself to be sold to another bank. So we unfortunately were in this squeeze where we had to. They basically called our revolving line of credit, and they said, "Hey, you have 90 days to pay off this because we're not going to renew it when it comes due." So we really scrambled. We actually found some private money to help us bridge that gap. But at the end of the day, we were unable to refinance that revolving line of credit. It was a very devastating day in my life and for a lot of people involved, because I had 168 employees at the time, and we pretty much just wrapped up and folded the company. I personally wasn't hurt in that, but what I had spent the last 30 years of my life doing, I had to scratch my head and say, okay, what's the next chapter in my life? And a lot of my friends that were in the industry reached out to me and like, hey, we have a lot of respect for you. We would love to help you find a new position. I can get you an interview down in Florida. I can get you an interview and everybody stepped up and they really wanted to help me. But I came to the decision that was a chapter in my life that I just wanted to pivot and do something different. And all my friends were like, why you're so well known in the furniture industry. Why would you move into an area that you know nothing about? And my comment to them at the time was, my success is not dictated or limited to what I've always done. Because if you're a marketer, so you sell a pool table, well, why don't we just apply that marketing to something else? You can be marketing information online, you could be marketing financial services, you could be marketing a home. And that was the decision that I made. I had a lot of friends who were in the residential real estate business and some in the commercial real estate business, and I saw that they were very successful in customer service and marketing, but they didn't have to carry a $2 million line of credit, which was really was something I was trying to avoid in my next business. So I really was able to develop a $20 million company. In other words, I sell about $20 million worth of residential real estate every year, but it's not my inventory. So that was really where that pivot came from. I wanted to be able to help other people with all of the marketing that I had learned over the years, but stay close to home and help people here locally with their biggest asset that they own, their home.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Let me ask you. So if you could go back, let's separate corporate America out of the picture, and let's just look at the transition that you went into when you started your two businesses that you just described how you left. Okay. If you could have redone those businesses from the beginning differently, okay, what would you have done?
I never want to look back with regret, but you obviously learn certain things. I don't regret any of those business decisions that I made. I feel like one of the things that ends up happening in business is you frequently will take on partners, and I had some fantastic partners, but I also, as an independent real estate agent, I don't have any real partners. I really control my own destiny. So I probably would have been more willing to bootstrap my business, struggle a little bit longer, and had a greater control of the business rather than selling off of, we basically sold off 75% of the business to outside investors. And then when you do that, you need to satisfy their demands, even if they're, not congruent with where you see the next 6 to 12 months going.
Yeah. So I know back then you had, stores all over, in a sense, the Midwest that were
Right.
in secondary and tertiary markets. How many stores did you have again?
I think we had 14 to 16. We opened some stores that were not financially successful. So, as their leases come due, you wrap them up. My recollection is about 16 at the time. So you can imagine the responsibility. You've got, 168 employees that are looking to you for their weekly paycheck. You have landlords that are looking for their monthly rent check. You have people within the organization that are support structure. So, even if you're an entrepreneurial company, you have a tremendous amount of responsibility to other people. And I'm not averse to being responsible, but I like the job that I'm in now. I'm responsible to my clients, but I'm not responsible to some much larger corporate overhead.
Yeah. Well, I know when you were in corporate America, you were traveling 100 days a year, which is basically 3 months of your life. You described some of the sacrifices related to that. Describe the stress level on you and your family when you were, one, in corporate America, and then two, when you were in business for yourself initially.
So my wife was a professional studying medicine when actually we've known each other since third grade. So it's not something that you meet someone in college and you develop a relationship. We knew each other and we had a really good friendship that blossomed into our marriage. But I had that career and traveled around my first job. And then we reconnected as adults. My wife had 2 children from a previous marriage, and I think we reconnected, at the age of 25. So I had already been doing a lot of work and travel in the first job, but the second job, she was there to support me. So she could have been a very successful person on her own in the corporate world, but because of my travels, it just made more sense for her to manage the household and manage the family while I was gone. And they certainly were very good at that. And I will say, there is a dynamic when you choose to travel when you're forced to travel so extensively, and that is the reconnecting. So every week I'd be in the plane going out somewhere, but we would always come back. I was very rarely gone for more than 3 to 4 days. When I traveled to China, I would be gone for typically 16 to 17 days at a time, so that was more challenging. But there's that honeymoon period of you're gone and then you come back. So I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to go away to a convention and then you come home to best. It's like you always kind of have this reconnection, which I think is really fantastic. But we were a great partner. We chose to homeschool our children during the back in the 2000 timeframe. I think when we got to the pandemic, people thought that was more of an acceptable thing to do, but it was more challenging, and there was less support back in 25 years ago to do that. So that was her commitment, because she's the one who chose to do all the education for the children. But then when I transitioned into real estate, by that time all of our children were adult children, so it wasn't a matter of interacting with them on a daily basis. Now my wife had become kind of a support structure for our grandchildren. So, we invested and spent a lot of time with the grandchildren. She did quite a bit of child care for them. So it just opened up. But then the advantage was now I was home every day. So I would highly recommend that.
Right on. Well, I know you today as, I would say, one of the most successful, highly involved luxury home salespersons, okay, here in
Right.
Central Ohio. I mean, I've watched the real estate market just because of some past relationships I've had. I've watched the real estate market develop, and I've watched different, teams and people do what they do. But in today's world, I see you all over the place. So would you say that the marketing background, whether it be from college, corporate America, or owning the two businesses that you had earlier, played a massive role? Or was it kind of the start of what you're doing today to market yourself in your current profession?
I'd like to say that my life experiences and my business experiences and my personal relationships with successful business people was foundational in my success within the luxury real estate market. And I want to say that when I decided to get involved in real estate, everybody says, well, it's your sphere that's successful. Well, that is absolutely true. But in my experience, I wasn't a member at a country club. I wasn't a member, of a golf league. I really wasn't engaged with people on a personal level, because so much of my time had been spent traveling that when I was home, I wanted to spend time with my family, not in a social situation. So I really didn't have a sphere of influence to rely on to build my business. But what I did recognize is that I wanted to find people that had problems. And in 2014, we were still in a struggling economy. So there were a lot of unsold houses, expired listings on the market. And I decided to go after those, but I decided to go after the ones that were really expensive and kind of create a vision for how those would be sold. And one of my clients, dear friend of mine, and he lived on the 18th green of Muirfield Country Club. So that's where the PGA tournament takes place. And his house was unsold. And it was a very challenging house. And I ended up doing a tremendous number of not only marketing, but I ended up having a lot of open houses, which a lot of people in the luxury market don't do that. If they do, they have their assistants run the open house. They don't do it personally. But I wanted to be involved in conversations with people who were ready, willing, and able to buy luxury real estate. And there's no better situation to put yourself in than, standing in a house. It's like I'm guilt by association. I'm standing in the house, so there must be a reason that I'm in the house. So even if I've never sold a house like this, people assume that I have. So I leveraged that very quickly to add to that portfolio. I'll tell you a story that I leveraged early on for success, and that was while I was in that house. One of the Blue Jacket hockey players came in, and I had a conversation with him. It was obvious that the house wasn't going to be a good fit for him, but he told me what he was looking for. He wasn't my client, but he basically gave me a list of things that would be important to him in a house. So I took that as marching orders to go out and find that property. And the funny thing about that story is I didn't start where most people would normally start. I found a contractor who was working in the neighborhood doing a lot of repairs. And in this instance, he was repairing a deck. So I chatted with him. I walked into the backyard and I said, "Hey, Mike, I know you do a lot of business. I see your truck out here. Were there any houses that you worked on in the last 12 months that the homeowner told you they were fixing the house up because they were thinking about selling it?" So you can see that's a it's a different way to approach the problem. And he gave me the name of an individual that he had actually been to their house. So I went home and I wrote a handwritten letter, on a yellow, like on yellow stationery, and I put it into a FedEx envelope because at the time I was struggling. I didn't even pay the money to send it FedEx. I put it in the envelope and I went and dropped it on his porch. And the letter went something like, "Hey, Jim, you have a lovely home. I have no idea if you're thinking about selling that home, but I'm working with a local NHL hockey player that I think he would love a home like yours, with a beautiful view like yours, with a beautiful pool in the backyard like yours. No idea if he would, if this would be the right fit for him, but doesn't it merit a conversation?" And that he and I left my phone number, and Jim called me back, and that started another really, really great relationship where I leveled up and got more expensive property in the community. So long-winded story, but it's like it's a different way to approach and find business.
Absolutely. So Andrew, there are multiple things you just mentioned, but here's what I have to ask. I bet that out of the thousands of real estate agents in Columbus, there are many of them who probably wish they could break into the luxury market, but maybe they don't have the confidence, maybe they don't have the connections, maybe they don't have the know-how. So they're going in a different direction, whatever that might be. I've never been a realtor, et cetera. So
Right.
what gave you, because I know when you were transitioning from those other businesses you had people saying, "Why are you going into a field that you don't know anything about?" So
Right.
what gave you the confidence not only to go into real estate, but to say, "I'm going to go into real estate in the luxury market and I'm going to do very well there"? Because for me, that's a little bit of a risk. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it, you have people that have problems. It doesn't matter if it's $180,000 condominium or if it's a $2.5 million house. Those people have things going on in their lives that they need help with. So the reason I chose to go after the bigger problems, as it were, is you're dealing with an individual typically who has the wherewithal to solve some of those problems. If you're working with a first-time home buyer, the challenge with working with, and by the way, I do work with first-time home buyers. I work with young people that are buying, but if I was to say what my avatar is, the person that I'm wanting to help the most, it's someone that's 55 and older that's been in their home for a long time, because generationally we connect, we understand, we have a common language, and there's an empathy, and they know when I say I know what you're going through, they believe me, because we have that commonality. You and I have some of that commonality. When I'm dealing with a younger person, now I'm moving into more of a father figure, and I'm thinking like I'm treating them like they're my own family, my own children. What would I want to do to help them in that situation? But for me to pursue the luxury was really maybe selfish on my part, but also insightful on my part. And that was, it really takes about just as much time to market and sell a $2 million property as it does a $400,000 property. And if I'm working with a first-time home buyer, that's one transaction. So I help them, we transact, we get the deal closed. They're not going to be back in the market for a minimum of 5 to 7 to 10 years. So the lifetime value of that relationship, the lifetime value is good, but the short-term value is not fantastic. Whereas I look at an individual, true story, I have an individual professional that had a $2 million home. They sold that $2 million home, and then they downsized to something that was $1.1 million. So now you have two transactions in a very short window of time, that the net value of that transaction is $3 million versus 400,000. So you can see the multiples make a lot more sense when you're able to help those individuals that have a problem up in the upper realm.
Right on. So I know you've had a long career. You had a long career that really in every aspect involves marketing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously involves working with people. But you mentioned earlier with that one transaction on the 18th green of Muirfield, there are some things right there that are highly creative,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be talking to the repairman or the yellow paper or the FedEx and dropping it off, all of that. These are things these are things that I have to catch because it's not things you can really teach. Okay. So where did that come from? Where did that creativeness come from? And I'm sure you do. There's probably 20 things you could tell me you've done, but tell me where that comes from.
Well, I feel no matter what you're doing, you need to surround yourself with people who are outside of your industry, one, along with people who are inside of your industry who are successful. So people that are successful in marketing information, for instance, and it could be financial information, it could be read this book and learn how to use video to present, your whatever your offering is. So early on in my career, I was always attracted and looking for the advice of people who were successful outside of what I was doing, and built good, strong friendships with them. One of my really good friends was a mattress wholesaler. So he went around, and he was always inviting me to seminars and webinars or 3-day events, which had absolutely nothing to do with the furniture industry, but they had all to do with marketing, creating offers. And I've always been an early adopter of those things. I'll give you an example. Our online business, which was started back in 2003, 2004, was kind of ahead of, you didn't see a whole lot of videos online because there wasn't the bandwidth for doing that. But as soon as I saw the opportunity to create videos online, we had these big sectionals, and they had recliners in them, and they had things that moved and operated. And I sat in my office, and I remember that the people who answered the phone were right outside of my office, and I could hear the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, and they would always be the same type of question. So I said to my marketing department, okay, tomorrow we're going to go out in the showroom, and we're going to create a dozen FAQ videos. And they just look at me like, what are you talking about? And it's like, well, I'm going to be the person that's demonstrating the way the recliner works. I said, I'm a 6 foot tall person. I'm going to show these people visibly with a video how the features and the benefits work. Because there's no better way to demonstrate a product than, have a model that represents our typical buyer. And our typical buyer was a man like myself who was buying a recliner or a home theater seat online. And as soon as we did that and we started posting those videos on our website, or we actually had an eBay page too, where we actually posted videos, our sales really accelerated very quickly. And the impediments to closing the deal really went away. And what really brought that home to me is I remember I was working. We had a showroom that was attached, and we had a product that we called the Enterprise, and someone comes walking in the showroom and they're making a beeline. I'm like, hi, you're trying to slow them down a little bit, and you say, hey, what brings you in today? They're like, I watched your video online and I want to see that Enterprise sectional. So they already came in knowing what they wanted. They headed right to it, sat down in it, and they're like, I'll buy it. So you can see what that did. It created enough confidence. The content created confidence that they could move forward with the decision. So I started creating video content much more rapidly after that.
So do you think you're naturally a problem solver? I mean, I know guys are, but I mean, you would in general, we like to fix everything.
My wife would say that my personality trait was I want to wear the white hat, which is funny since I'm wearing the black shirt, wear the white hat and the white horse and ride in and save the day, because a real estate transaction has a lot of moving parts, and it's inevitable that something is going to break. And I've done this almost 300 times now, which is in the neighborhood of $145 million. So I have a nice history of helping people, get to the finish line. But I used to get really anxious about it. I used to lose sleep about it because, it's like the other people are suffering and struggling. And I just had to say, hey, slow down. We're gonna get there. I've been through this before. Trust me, it's going to work out. And you just have to back people off the ledge sometimes. So I think white hat is is a term that my wife would use.
No, I understand. Would you recommend if someone today wanted to get into the real estate market, okay, and they wanted to say, you know what, I want to move in the direction like Andrew Robinson, okay, I want to do what he's doing, but I'm not his age, okay, I'm in my early 20s, maybe early 30s. Okay. Right. Would you encourage them to approach it differently than you have? Because you obviously bring some tools to the table that they don't possess.
I think, yes, I would, depending on their personality. I mean, there is no limitation other than the limitation that you place on yourself, because you can be 21 years old and extremely successful. You just might have to approach it a little bit different than I did. But I think that the course of action that I would take, because this is a challenging industry with a tremendous amount of turnover, and the first 12 to 24 months can be a real financial struggle, because conversations that I have today may not be transactions that I can put in the bank for 1 or 2 or 3 years out, because I'm having foundational discovery conversations with people today that are not ready to transact. So, but they will be. But if you're new to the business and you're 21 years old, you need to put some business in the book. So my advice to those people is reach out to somebody within your market that you have a lot of respect for, that is growing their business. And there's different things that are like a team environment. So someone can be, I could start a team and those people would be within my organization. And I could be a mentor to them, and or I could work with them in a capacity to help them feel comfortable. Let's say, for instance, I have 3 or 4 listings that are north of $1 million or north of $800,000 above their current comfort zone. I say, well, let's get you working in an environment where you're working in an open house and you're engaging in people and conversing with them that fit this demographic that I'm talking about. As long as you are able to provide expert advice and guidance, and if you don't know the answer, say, well, Greg, that's a great question. My partner, Andrew, has had that experience before. Let me confer with him and I'll get back to you, because I want you to get the right answer. So it's not a matter of winging it. It's a matter of serving the client and building confidence. As a matter of fact, one of my team members, I don't have a team in terms of a junior agent working for me, but I've built an organization of people that I interact with them on a regular basis. It's kind of a mentorship type thing. And one of them reached out to me and said, hey, I really want to move in the direction, because he's very well known and does very well with investment grade properties and works inside the inner city. And a lot of his properties are in the sub $400,000 range. And my advice to him is like, hey, this is a good friend of mine in the builder space. They have models in the $1 million range. And if you can find 2 hours a week to go sit in that model, you're going to start having conversations with the avatar that you want to service. Within 2 weeks, I think he did that 3 times. And within 2 weeks, he was having conversations with people that he was looking for $1 million properties for them. So you have to put yourself in those conversations or in those situations to have those conversations.
So how critical would you say it is for someone, I don't care what business it is, but let's just say we're talking about luxury items, as an example. How important is it that you understand your avatar from the get-go, or should you progress a year or two and develop that avatar? What's the strategy for that person?
Just a certain consistency. Like one of the things that we all know is that social media is someplace where people discover us. And there's other things that are really important as well, and that is the power of an online review. So if you are just getting started, one, you've got to get in front of people and have those conversations. But two, you have to plant the seed with that person that at the end of the transaction, you're going to ask them for one thing, and that is you're going to ask that two. One is you're going to ask them for an online review to share the experience with them. And I started to do that very, very, very early in my career. And I look at other people that have been doing this. I've been doing this for 11 years. And I look at other people that have been doing it for just as long. And you go online and they don't seem to know how important that is. You can barely find them online. So I would say, encourage those people to start documenting their success with online reviews. And then the second part of that is to have regular conversations and follow-ups with that person to make sure that they're happy with the decision that they made, and remind them that you're in the business. You don't have to call them up and say, hey, Greg, do you have any friends or neighbors that are wanting to move? But you have to stay actively involved in conversation with those people. So when they're involved in a conversation, they were like, oh yeah, you should talk to my friend Andrew. He can help you solve that problem. I know that probably didn't answer your question, but I think it scratched the surface of something that we need to focus on as entrepreneurs.
So I know that you've progressed in your real estate experience and career. You've worked with a couple different companies. You don't need to necessarily describe them unless you want to, but I know you're wearing a shirt right now of the one that you're currently with, which probably you're very happy where you are. Otherwise you wouldn't be there. You have the ability to move on if you wanted to. So
absolutely.
What are you able to gather? Like what does Real offer you, and what do you offer Real as to why you're there?
So I've been in the business for 11 years. The first 2 years, when you first get in the business, you don't know what you don't know. So I chose a very well respected company in town that was very foundational in my early success, and I thought that they were very good. But as I started transitioning into more and more luxury real estate, my perception at the time was I needed to align myself with a luxury brand, because I didn't have a brand per se. I didn't have a track record. So I wanted to borrow the success of the brand. So I went out and I got the Remax balloon to be my support. And that was a good decision at the time. But their financial model, as I continued to grow and grow and grow my business, I continued to give them a portion of my commission, my proceeds. As my success got bigger, my check that I wrote them got bigger as well. And it started to cause me to look at other ways to grow my business with other brands. And I really searched through other friends of mine who were with other companies. And one of the companies that I have a tremendous amount of respect for is EXP. And it was a cloud-based brokerage. So it was moving in this direction that you didn't need brick and mortar. You needed systems. You needed you needed collaboration. You needed a network of successful people, but you didn't need to meet in a building every day. And I really, really liked that company. I went out and I went to their national event in Las Vegas. I spent 3 days with them, and I was really, really close to pulling the trigger. But the disconnect for me, and this isn't a disrespect to them, the disconnect to me in my market is I saw that the guys that were really successful that were in a different price point than I was, and I really wanted to focus on the luxury side of the business. And when I looked around, there were a couple people across the country, and by the way, this is 4.5 years ago. So I joined Real 4.5 years ago, and yes, I have been really happy with the leadership and the technology and everything about it. But what I saw is people that were very, very adept, and many of them were much, much younger than I am, in doing video content and communicating with the audience and building a business and a rapport using technology. And I was attracted to that. And the thing that really attracted to me to that was that they weren't selfish or stingy in their ability to share what was working. So I think that one of the things that ties this company and the strength of this company together is that really we're all shareholders. We all share in the benefit of the company. So when I joined, I got stock. When I encourage other people to join, the company rewarded me by giving me stock for those people that were attracted to the company. And they created what they call Real Academy, which Real Academy is a training venue. And like you and I are together on a Zoom call or I forget, the StreamYard call. And the technology enables us to cross the vast difference. We don't need to be in an office to learn. And that's what I liked, because some of the top leaders in this company, they weren't figureheads sitting in an ivory tower. They were investing in the success. They were servant leaders investing in the success of the people in the business. They were investing in technology to support the agent. And I find that really, really attractive. It's not a message of, hey, we're going to do this sometime in the future. It's like, hey, we're doing this. This is our time frame. We're going to make this happen. And over the first couple of years, I always saw them, raise the bar and hit those metrics that they were getting. And I've really developed a great friendship with people who are far more successful than I am across the country. And I can pick up the phone, I can call them, I can text them, and they're so gracious in giving support. So I would say it doesn't matter what company you are. It doesn't matter if you're with my company or another company. Make sure that you're with a company where people are nice and they're willing to help you. And I'm having lunch on Friday tomorrow with some people who just joined our organization, and they want my input. They're not in my organization, but they're part of the whole company, and I'm investing time to help them break into the luxury space. So be with a company that is going to help you be successful.
So you're going to help these folks break into the luxury space. Okay. So what would you tell someone? Because there's a lot of people out there that sell big ticket items, and they sell big ticket items, one, because they're sexy. Number one, a lot of times, especially if you're young, it's a sexy product, whatever it is. Number two, you make more money, per transaction, but you have fewer transactions. So you've had to balance all of this. But I also know you came in with a mindset where you had a self-image. You had a confidence about you because of your background that allows you to step in and go, I can do this. And I know I can do this and do this very, very well. I will be very relatable. So what would you tell someone? I know you said anyone can be successful. 21-year-old, they can be successful. Yes. But what would you tell this new agent or agents that want to break into the luxury real estate space? What would you tell them today, like you're going to do tomorrow?
You need to meet people and find out what's important to them, and make that conversational points about those. They're not transactions; they're relationships. You have to build the relationship. You have to build the trust. You have to know your numbers. If you're gonna move into the luxury space, you need to know. I'll give you a fact. In 2019, before we got into the pandemic, there were 149 transactions in Central Ohio above $1 million. Fast forward to the last 12 months, there were over 440. So that's like that's a statistic that you need to have that type of information and digest that information, because people want you to be an expert within the area. So become a student of that. Another thing that I noticed is a lot of my clients, um, money, they're motivated by money because of what it can do for them in their lives. And like many of my clients have very successful careers, but some of the things that they like to do would include travel, or they would include, let's say one of my friends owns 5 or 6 exotic cars. So whenever I'm with that individual, we talk about travel, we talk about the exotic cars. Now, exotic cars are not a part of my life, but they're an important part of his life. And then to build upon that, I have another client who works with Honda in the NSX division and with the self-driving. So they have a very, very specific thing that's important to them, but they also like sexy cars. So what I did is I took an opportunity to put those two people together. In Powell, we have what's called Cars and Coffee, which people bring their cars and we have coffee on a Saturday morning once a month. So it has nothing to do with real estate, but it's not unusual for me to invite a client to that event to show that, I'm interested in what's going on in their life. So it didn't really answer your question, Greg, but it says you have to go beyond the transaction. You have to become an expert. You have to present the information when it's relevant, but you also have to find reasons to engage them outside of real estate, outside of life insurance, outside of investment counseling, outside of, if someone's involved in lawn care, doesn't mean that every time I have a conversation with the guy is about lawn care.
Well, one thing I've picked up from you today, especially, but I already knew it to be true, but I picked it up for sure, is you have the ability to be patient. You understand the value of patience, but you also understand the value of relationships, because
Mhm.
you've seen relationships that you've built that have gone south, and you've seen relationships that you've built that have done very, very well. And you've seen it over a longer period of time than maybe a young person. Is that true?
Mhm. It's sure. Let me share something about that. It's like some agents like look at a lead or contact information, and they say, "Is this person able or ready, willing, and able to transact in the next 60 to 90 days?" And if they're not, I'm not going to invest a lot of time and money in that. Well, I have a much longer time. Obviously, I would love that, but if someone calls me and says, "Hey, we're thinking about moving in the next 2 or 3 years. Would you happen to stop by and just give us some advice as to things that we can invest in?" Absolutely. I actually would encourage consumers to invite whoever that is, that professional is in their world, real estate agent, invite them. If you're thinking about doing something 2 or 3 years from now, invite them to come over, take a walk through the house, and give you some guidance on what would be a smart investment, because people don't know where the investment is going to have a good return. And you may say, "Hey, we think we're going to finish the basement." I'm like, you might not get your money back for that, but if you change the carpet or do this, much smaller investment, much greater return. So just get the advice of a professional in your life. If you don't have a professional in your life, feel free to reach out to me, and the contact information will be underneath the video below. I'll give you an example. I was driving through a neighborhood. One of my clients lives in Florida. We were building a house in Powell. I was taking pictures of the building process so I could send them, "This is the progress on your home while you're in Florida." So I'm taking pictures of the property. Car pulls up and the people roll the window down and they're like, "Hey, are you building a new house?" And I'm like, "No, this is my client. We're building. They live in Florida. I'm just doing this." And they're like, "We're thinking about moving in the next couple of years, downsizing. We're not ready yet." So we exchanged contact information. I said, "Hey, if you don't mind, I'm just going to stay in touch with you over the next year or so. And when you're ready, I'll be here to answer your questions. And if you wanted to learn more about patio homes, because they were a downsizing client, I'd love to be the resource for you. If you want me to come and give you some advice on your house, I'll do that. No, 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 no. We're not ready. You know, that sales resistance that you get. Well, here's the story. Over the next 7 years, I stayed in contact with 7 years. I stayed in. Most people don't have the patience for that. You know, every 90 days, this is your Powell market report. This is, hey, I noticed your neighbors sold their house. This is what's going on with this new community. I drove to this. You just stay in contact, provide information. And then I remember it was like just February of last year. They were down in Florida, and I texted them something, and they're like, hey, we're going to be back in town next week, and we're thinking about going to look at this house. Can you stop by? So that patience resulted in they bought a patio home, which in the Powell area is in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. And then the house that they'd lived in for 30 years, we got it ready, took it to market, and it sold in the, let's say, the $800,000 range. So that was the result of 7 years of building a solid foundation. Most people don't have the patience for that, but isn't that what we all should be? It's not my time frame that's important, it's their time frame.
No, you're so right. But Andrew, here's the deal. For a lot of entrepreneurs, okay, I've been there. Okay. I don't know if you've ever been at where I'm going to describe, but you're in a position where you don't have any money. Like you're investing everything you can possible into your real estate career. And it's like someone says, I don't want to do anything for 3 years. You're like, oh my gosh, I got to buy groceries. So how do you balance that with the real estate, something that's, I don't care how big the house is. It's a big ticket item. It's the biggest purchase most people make. So how do you balance that anxiety that you have? I need money now to that.
Well, you have to time block things that are going to generate money quickly. And I'll give you an example, but what I said earlier in my story, I went after expired listings because expired listings, they have a problem. You can solve that problem. So I don't really do that so much anymore. I have a different methodology of approaching those people nowadays. But if you, as a new agent, need money now, go after that low-hanging fruit, and you're going to end up with a lot of people hanging up on you. If they hang up on you, write them a letter. One of my good clients, who we're in the middle of 2 transactions right now. 10 years ago, he was an expired listing, and he was in a rural property down a long driveway, probably a 3 or 4 acre property. And I'm walking down his driveway because I couldn't find his phone number to say, hey, I noticed your house is on the market. It didn't sell. It's a lovely house. I'm just trying to get a better understanding of why I may or may not be able to solve your problem. I just want to get a better understanding why it wasn't successful, and what you would define as a successful. Well, that conversation was very painful for people that are shy and don't want. People are like, oh my God, I would never do that. Well, that conversation ended up to a listing probably within less than 30 days, and that house sold in less than 40 days. So 70 days later, after that painful, stressful walk down that driveway with 2 vicious yellow labs barking at me, we got them out of that house. We got them into another house, and it created a relationship that's lasted for 11 years. And I think that between him, his wife, his mom, I think we've done at least 8 transactions with that. So you just never know where there's going to lead. So that's a story of long-term building long-term relationships, but with the initial conversation was a short-term focus. So hopefully that helps.
Oh, it totally does. What was the problem you solved?
Well, they were an expired listing. They probably were not marketed properly at the time. One of the things that I always did early on in my career is today it's very popular, but I added aerial photography. So if you're looking at a property that's on a lake or, has some acreage or it's on the river, I made that investment And it used to be that was a really expensive, like a video back 11 years ago might have been $400. And I remember I had a house sitting up high on the hill over the river, different house. And we did a video. That first house that I sold on the Muirfield Country Club looked down we had one that looked down the 6th and the 7th tee. Beautiful home. And we got the video flying over the house, looking out at the golf course. You just can't get that. And at the time, that was, just the video was like $400. It's not unusual for me to spend $1,100, $1,200 on marketing videos, photographs, all that type of thing for a house, and which is once again difficult. You mentioned the people that are struggling. Well, if you're struggling and you can't afford to make that investment, partner with someone who can. Bring me, go out and find the person that needs to sell the house, bring it to me. We'll partner together to get it sold. I'll make the investment and then we'll share in the proceeds at the end. Find someone who can help you do that. So, because if you can't market a luxury property without an investment, you can't use your cell phone to take photographs and expect to be successful on the cheap.
Yep. Andrew, that was a big point, because now you can go in together. Not only can this new agent learn from you, 2, you guys can work together through the process. 3, you can in a sense be the bank, but 4, they're still going to be able to help sell the house, have the relationship, and solve the problem. That's phenomenal. So, right. Andrew, I know you're in the middle of your busy day. We're going to have all your contact information in the description below. Anything that you want to add in there is great, but I have one last question for you, and that is this. What is next for Andrew? Like, as you look into the next 5 to 10 years out, does it involve real estate? Does it involve mentoring? What does it look like?
It's going to continue to be in the real estate space. And I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing and serving the clients that I serve. But based on my experience of doing this for 11 years and my business experience, I really want to build relationships with younger agents in a more of a mentor role. And one of the things about our organization is people can join our organization and all of a sudden we're financially tied together because the company is willing to kind of pay me a referral fee for people that come into the organization. And it's my goal to build that, what they call the rev share. I like to call it profit sharing of that group, and help them be successful. Because why make them struggle for 6 or 7 years to learn what I learned when by spending a few hours a week together, I can help them much more quickly than the time frame it took me to reach this level. So I think that mentorship and coaching will probably be an important part of the next 5 or 10 years of my life.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I think you'd be a phenomenal real estate coach, especially in the luxury real estate market. Okay. I mean, in so many ways. So I just want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for this opportunity that you've given me to interview you. And I'm looking forward to sharing this with the world. So thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.